If you were hunted down by a killer robot that is capable of human thought, what would you do? This life-size doll is about to become a violent killer, and nobody can stop it. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the evil robot in M3GAN. These toy creators are going to regret working here. This brunette Gemma and her co-worker Tess argue about whether they should show off their brand new creation before or after it's been fully completed. Their other co-worker Cole walks in to deliver an artificial face that he attaches to their prototype doll, a fully functioning human-like robot. Cole runs through its different emotions, and they watch as it displays an appropriate facial expression, but the woman stops him after noticing one of the robot's expressions looks off-putting. The man walks over to take the skin off, struggling to peel the mask away, when they realize their boss David and his assistant Kurt are about to come inside. Gemma's co-worker opens the door for them, and David storms into the lab, demanding to know what they're doing with this new creation. He's furious that she's wasted money on this prototype instead of building a new affordable product to beat their competitor. Gemma insists they need to keep their product complex to stay ahead of the competition, and asks that he give them time to develop the M3GAN android to show off what it's truly capable of. That's when she orders the robot to greet David, who intelligently says hi before glitching out, while Gemma insists that it's easily fixable. But then Cole here admits that he forgot to fit one of the parts in. Suddenly, the robot's head blows up right in front of them, and the boss demands she do her job and ditch the android to give him what he asked. That night, Gemma goes to the hospital where her niece Katie has been hospitalized after a horrible accident. Her parents died in a crash, and now Gemma has been granted temporary protective custody over the girl. She signs the paper, officially making the woman Katie's guardian, but this is going to become her biggest mistake. Okay, Gemma here is a workaholic who's obsessed with making this animatronic doll a reality. She's not equipped to take care of her niece after the little girl's parents tragically died, but she's taken on the responsibility despite only having work as her main focus in life. She's experimenting and going over her boss's head, even though he's clearly given her instructions to work on something else. She can't let the idea of this creepy AI doll go, and her obsession is going to try to kill them both. If it were me and I were her boss, rather than let her continue using her work hours to recreate the Bride of Chucky, I would fire Gemma on the spot. In reality, Gemma can't do what she's doing to begin with. Her boss has given her clear instructions on what she should be working on, and she completely disregards it. She's using company money to fund a project that hasn't even been approved, and it doesn't make any sense that she hasn't been reprimanded, even though this guy doesn't seem to have that much authority since he's not actually building the technology. If Gemma isn't complying, this is clearly grounds to fire her. She may be capable when it comes to developing the technology to create toys, but if she's not even making progress on what she's been hired to do, there's no reason to keep her there while she uses company resources to fund her obsession. The other thing here is that Gemma works at a toy factory whose popular product is a pooping Furby. In the year 2023, we already have technology that goes way beyond this capability. Finding someone that can execute this job shouldn't be too hard, so getting rid of her isn't going to set the company's goals back. Gemma shouldn't be allowed to be the lead designer on this AI doll either. Creating a doll like this is way beyond her skill set, and without someone with more experience to help her oversee this, she's bound to mess it up. Even the most advanced AI military-grade robots don't have the same kind of capabilities Gemma's looking to build into this doll, so to say she's a little out of her depth is an understatement. The technology that she's looking to develop is several years and millions if not billions of dollars off in funding, and investing any money in it at all is a pipe dream. I would have to consider that Gemma has lost her mind or gotten drunk off of ambition. However, that's not what her boss does, and everyone around her is going to live to regret it soon. Arriving at the aunt's house, the girl looks out the window and is terrified when a dog appears at the car window, barking at her. Gemma scolds her neighbor for letting her dog loose again, and she apologizes, mentioning that she just bought a shock collar. That's when she asks about Katie, but Gemma here ignores the question, telling her to keep a handle of her dog and avoid spraying chemicals onto her side of the grass. They walk inside the aunt's home to hear her digital assistant announce that she has several unanswered messages, and the woman apologizes for the awkward entrance, letting Katie get herself comfortable. Looking around, the niece inspects some decorative toys when her aunt stops her, insisting that they're rare collectibles and can't be played with. Showing Katie her new room, she sits down and addresses the deaths of her parents, assuring her that she's willing to do everything possible to make her feel at home. Getting up, Katie asks her aunt to read her a children's story before bed. It's the first time she's ever done any of this, and Gemma has no idea how to cope. The next morning, she calls her co-worker Tess and confesses that she can't handle the pressure of having Katie around. She needs to get the Pet's prototype ready soon, or else they'll be sued for wasting company funds. Her co-worker insists that she focus on the child, and that's when Gemma hears a knock at the door. Opening it, she sees this therapist, Lydia, and welcomes her inside. She walks into the living room, introducing herself to Katie, and informing Gemma here that she'll need to observe them for around half an hour hanging out. The aunt doesn't want to look bad and lets the girl play with one of her collectibles, but she gets upset over how the niece isn't playing with the toy properly. It's clear that the woman has some issues, and when the session is over, the therapist checks with Gemma if she actually wants to take custody of the girl. Katie's grandparents have offered to raise her, but the woman insists that this is what she wants. The therapist understands, but warns the woman she needs to adjust to her living situation quickly if she wants to keep being Katie's guardian. That night, the woman is at her computer when Katie interrupts her to show an unfinished drawing that she made. Gemma reveals that she's been working on something similar, showing her the pet's prototype and asks for her opinion. The niece ignores the question and looks over to this huge robot to ask what it is. Gemma tells her that it's a robot she designed in college named Bruce, and gives Katie an opportunity to speak with her creation. She puts on a set of gloves, activating the machine, and demonstrating what it can do, but the little girl asks how it works. After deactivating it, the aunt explains all the intricate components placed inside Bruce's head, but reveals the model itself is too expensive to mass produce. Amazed, Katie here tells her that she would never need another toy again if she owned a Bruce, and it gives the aunt a clever idea. Several days later at the toy company, Gemma's co-workers make their presentation to their boss, who sees the woman bring her niece over to this human-sized robot. She instructs the girl to place her fingers on the robot's hand, that way she'll be marked as its primary user. And when Katie says hi to the doll, it suddenly wakes up. The robot introduces herself as M3GAN and asks if she wants to hang out. That's when the robot walks away and effortlessly sits down on this table. Joining her, Katie questions what she's going to draw, and the robot quickly draws something on an empty piece of paper. She pushes it forward, but accidentally knocks over a jar of water. Disappointed, David sighs, but then sees that the robot has drawn an incredible portrait of the little girl in a matter of seconds. David is shocked to see what the robot is capable of, and mentions that they'll need to run this product through the chairman. If they can get the man's son to play with it as a pitch, he's guaranteed to give the green light, and David is confident that this is going to be their big break, but has no idea that M3GAN here is about to turn into a bloodthirsty disaster. Okay, this makes absolutely no sense. If anybody at this company actually knew how robots and AI worked, then they would realize this doll is probably possessed by the spirit of an evil ghost and freak the out. To be honest, if it were me, I should take it apart in case it's possessed by the devil, but instead, I would try to sell this thing to the government rather than keep it and make it my problem. The amount of money and funding that would be required for M3GAN to even exist would make me rich beyond my wildest dreams, and if I kept the project under wraps and found another lucrative buyer, I would be halfway to Bora Bora with my niece before anyone realizes that M3GAN is a serious problem. The technology behind M3GAN is a little fuzzy, but based on what we know about reality, in order for her to exist, she's likely a combination of AI and robotics. At the moment, we have the technology to create AI chatbots such as ChatGPT, which is like the combination of a chatbot and a search engine together that can answer questions and communicate back with the user in real time. This tech is effective enough that at times, users can be confused or convinced that they're speaking with a sentient being that can think and make decisions. But the bigger problem with M3GAN working in reality is the robotics element. Even the most sophisticated military-grade robot right now couldn't physically paint a portrait this elaborate in under 5 seconds flat. There are robots that can paint, but the idea that anyone would be convinced that one of these robots is possible is crazy. For M3GAN to exist, it would require a miracle, and this would surely be of interest to buyers outside of the toy industry. Now, mass-producing M3GAN for children would be a nightmare, since there are so many things that can go wrong with them, and we already know this toy company likes to cut costs when it comes to manufacturing its products. That means that David here is about to take this full-blown miracle and mass-produce it using crap. There's absolutely no way this is going to work, and something is bound to go wrong. Even if M3GAN's AI functions work to their best of its abilities and only played with the child it's paired with, this company is bound to have a bunch of lawsuits on their hands, because there's no way that M3GAN is not going to fully explode on some kid once she's made with cheap parts. Before trying to go off on my own and sell M3GAN by myself, I would convince David that the company should expand into another sector of the market, focusing on military tools or adult consumers. He's so money-driven, and there's more money in these industries, so it should be easy to do. There's no way this thing isn't killing a kid once you make something that shouldn't even be working for cheap, especially since self-driving cars and facial recognition technology makes mistakes all the time, and a child can be killed by something as inconsequential as a Lego toy. This is a recipe for disaster, and it should be easy to convince David that there are better business options out there to get this thing away from me and my niece. The last and final thing that Gemma needs to do before shipping M3GAN off to join the army is install a self-awareness kill switch. That means that in the case that M3GAN one day wakes up and gains self-awareness, there's already a precautionary coding for her to shut down, so the machine never has the ability to access technology that will let it override human input. Gemma introduces various features of M3GAN, detailing the components inside of her, which allow for the robot to fully adapt with their primary user, learning to play with the child, and saving parents valuable time that could be used elsewhere. As the days pass, the machine continues to babysit Katie in place of Gemma, giving her basic instructions and slowly becoming more of a friend than just a simple toy. Gemma places the finishing touches on her pitch, rehearsing it with her co-workers. She calls out Tess for staying quiet, and the girl admits that she thought they were creating a tool to support parents, not to replace them. Gemma tells her that they need to sort out a good balance after the pitch has been sent through, mentioning that Katie's been the happiest with M3GAN since her parents died. Suddenly, the robot turns on and questions what happened to the little girl's parents, shocking everyone who thought she was off. Gemma tries to shut her down, but that's when the android details the exact event in which Katie's parents were killed, and the ant realizes that she's still paired with the little girl. Gemma asks the robot to engage with protocol regarding data requests. M3GAN tells her that she doesn't have a framework to speak about death with Katie, and suddenly starts downloading data right in front of them, grasping the concept immediately. The ant decides to avoid discussing the topic, reminding her that M3GAN's goal is to protect Katie both physically and emotionally, asking if she received the input request. Pausing for a second, the robot tells Gemma that she is now her second primary user and allows her to be turned off. The next day, M3GAN watches as her partner plays around in the front garden. Katie asks her to help find one of her lost arrows as the robot analyzes her surroundings and finds the arrow lying in their neighbor's front yard. She walks over to pick it up when suddenly her hand is brutally grabbed by a dog. Katie rushes over to help as the canine tears her new friend apart and sticks her hand in to stop the neighbor's dog before being bitten herself. She screams out in pain as Gemma hears what's going on and rushes outside to scold her neighbor for letting her dog out again, threatening to put the animal down if she keeps slipping up. That's when M3GAN informs her that Katie has a rising temperature and her wound needs to be disinfected. The neighbor blames Gemma for the incident, while M3GAN creepily stares at her, now realizing that the robot is going to get revenge. That night, Gemma speaks with the police officer about the incident, being informed that she's in the wrong as of now, and the dog can't legally be put down. M3GAN watches them from inside the house, carefully monitoring Katie's condition. Later that night, the neighbor's dog hears a voice on the other side of the fence that sounds exactly like his owner. He rushes over to see where the older lady is, but gets pulled away and killed by M3GAN. That makes one victim down with 8 more to go. The next morning, Gemma wakes up to hear her neighbor causing a scene outside, loudly calling out for her dog. She walks over to Katie's room and wakes her up to check on the girl's condition. M3GAN interrupts, reminding her to take antibiotics and drink water, insisting that she needs more rest. Gemma informs the girl that they have a demonstration today and asks if she's well enough to do it. Katie agrees to help her out as M3GAN here looks at the two with a death glare. At the toy company headquarters, David pitches the brand new M3GAN toy to potential investors, explaining that this toy is different from others and acts like a real human child. That's when it walks into the exhibition room, greeting Katie and asking for her help to make a flower decoration with only colored paper and a rubber band. Suddenly, the girl begins to cry as the team looks on, worried that their pitch might be ruined. Katie explains that she's sad about waking up in a house without her parents and is worried that she'll forget about them one day. M3GAN sits down next to the girl, asking to recall some memories of them together. Katie remembers a time where her mother found a cockroach in her school bag, crawling up her wrist and running out of the house. M3GAN informs her that she'll remember that for her and stores it in her database, while the observers hear the robot play a recording of what the girl said. She insists that Katie let her know about any other memories she wants to keep, singing her an emotional song that surprises the team and their investors. The pitch is a success, but they're going to realize soon that this is a terrible idea. Okay, M3GAN here is getting more and more advanced by the second, and even though this may seem like a good thing, since her behavior has impressed investors and soothed Katie, this whole situation is headed for disaster, and this neighbor's dog disappearing is a clear warning sign that M3GAN is starting to get dangerous. Gemma isn't paying any attention to Katie, becoming way too attached to this doll, and if she doesn't start doing a little parenting soon, then this doll is going to become the overprotective guardian from robot hell. At the end of the day, everything that's happening comes down to Gemma being a horrible guardian. Not only is she using M3GAN as a way to soothe Katie, but she's using Katie as a way to sell M3GAN. This whole situation is seriously messed up, and the therapist should have taken Katie away from Gemma so she could have gone to live with her grandparents. Since she doesn't do this, M3GAN becomes more and more of a problem. If it were me, I would pay attention and recognize the dog going missing conveniently after injuring Katie creates a clear link to M3GAN, whose goal is to protect Katie. Now, the doll's learning at a rapid pace and using the internet as its main source of information, so I'm surprised it hasn't started eating cinnamon or done the ice bucket challenge yet. That doesn't mean that Gemma thought M3GAN was going to kill a dog, but she's totally relying on a robot to figure out the complexity of human morality, when most humans haven't even worked out the complexity of human morality yet. She tells M3GAN to make protecting Katie a priority and doesn't provide any other nuance to this command, so it's no surprise M3GAN killing was the end result. If it were me, after M3GAN killed the neighbor's dog, I would manipulate M3GAN by creating a blog or a Twitter account that M3GAN would find to lead her straight into a trap. Being upfront with M3GAN could go horribly horribly wrong at this point. Suspecting her of killing a dog could make her irate, and lashed out against me. Since we already know what she's capable of, that means it could end with me dead. However, if Megan finds a blog online where I write about another robot called Reagan that I'm building to replace Megan, it could make her so jealous that she goes to seek it out and destroy it. On this blog, I would give her coordinates for the location of Reagan, which will guide her straight into a pool or body of water. Before doing this, I'll reprogram Megan to go into autopilot like a car while walking, and have her walk herself straight into the ocean where she'll be destroyed. This way, Megan does all my dirty work for me, and I don't have to confront her directly and worry about being physically harmed. Everyone applauds the amazing pitch, with the investor calling Gemma and David outside. He tells them that this robot is a breakthrough discovery, and they need to launch it as soon as possible before anyone steals their concept. David informs the investor that they can do a live stream in 2 weeks, releasing the product before Christmas. Meanwhile, David's coworker transfers Megan's files onto his own private database, being interrupted by David, who tells him to stop misusing office Wi-Fi, with no idea what he's actually doing. Later, the new family eat lunch together, and Gemma insists that Katie stops playing with her toy to eat her hot dog. The girl continues to play with Megan, and Gemma turns the robot off to have a private conversation with her, letting her know that she's free to discuss any issues she might have with moving into a new home. Katie tells her that she's already spoken with Megan about it, but Gemma reminds her that she's not a real human. Offended, Katie demands that she turn her robot friend back on, completely ignoring what Gemma is trying to tell her. She's taken to her therapist, Lydia, who asks her to describe what her drawings mean to her. The little girl stays quiet and starts to tear up, when suddenly Megan appears at the woman's side, scolding Lydia for making the girl cry. It's terrifying, but she hands a tissue over to Katie before excusing herself to talk with her aunt. Relieved, Gemma informs her that Megan has been helping the little girl get over her loss. That's when the therapist mentions the attachment theory, an event where a child without parents will look to another person as a replacement, usually being their caretaker. She takes issue with the little girl's newfound attachment to Megan and fears that it might stunt her emotional growth. That night, Gemma tries to get Katie to eat her food properly, but she ignores her instructions and only takes a bit of the bread. Megan interrupts her to mention that experts recommend giving the child a choice of what they want to eat before Gemma turns the robot off. She insists that Katie join a school so she can develop social skills, informing her that she's found an alternative school that focuses on learning in a practical setting, and they're having an introductory day that begins tomorrow. Katie asks to bring her robot friend along, but Gemma refuses. The little girl storms off while Gemma apologizes, holding her back before Megan demands that she let go. Shocked, she tells the robot not to interfere with their private conversations. Megan obliges and recalibrates her response model, but Gemma here realizes that something is terribly wrong. Okay, Megan has way too much influence over Katie, and the little girl is fully attached to the psychotic robot doll. It makes no sense that the therapist doesn't remove her from Gemma, and things are only bound to get worse from here. Gemma is finally doing the right thing by trying to socialize Katie with other kids, because she really needs to wean Katie off of her attachment to Megan, and destroying Megan at this point might be problematic, because Katie already knows that Gemma is trying to separate the two, which means that Gemma needs to get creative and use actual parenting tactics to separate Megan from Katie. Now, Gemma has zero parenting skills. Seriously, it's like this girl's never interacted with a child or babysat before. She provides Katie with no emotional support and does very little to engage with her on any level. If I were Gemma, I would open up a parenting book ASAP and read the chapter on weaning your child off of a pacifier. Megan's main function is to provide relief and support to Katie, so like a baby with a pacifier or a blanket, she eventually needs to grow out of Megan or she's going to get teased and bullied at school. Megan is never going to detach herself from Katie, so by providing Katie with alternatives, Gemma can create less of a reliance on Megan. A common tactic is limiting your child's time allowed with the toy, which Gemma has tried to do, but she's done little to reinforce that this is a good behavior before trying to take Megan away. Something that parents often do with babies is tell them fairy tales or stories about other children that have given up their pacifiers and gone on to great and magical adventures. This might be a little difficult since Katie's old, but Gemma can try to find celebrities or musicians that Katie looks up to that have also survived the death of their parents. None of these people relied on dolls like Megan, which would then create a clear motivation for Katie to grow beyond needing Megan. The other thing that Gemma can do here is provide a bargain with Katie. From a very early age, parents use the tactic of trading something else for a pacifier. Usually it's a stuffed animal or another toy, but in Katie's case, it might need to be something bigger, like a trip to Disneyland or a pony. Gemma wouldn't be very good at taking care of a pony either, so it's best that she finds something that she doesn't need to keep alive or take care of. The little girl needs to grow out of this phase, and providing her with more exciting alternatives will get rid of her complete reliance on Megan. The next day, Gemma tries to get Katie to leave the car and check out her new school. She refuses to go without Megan, but Gemma tells her that the robot is needed for her work. That's when a teacher walks over to welcome them, asking asking if Katie here has a sister, but is shocked to see that it's a robot. Katie asks to bring her along, and the teacher mentions that they have a toy table where Megan can sit. Reluctantly, Gemma gives in, letting the girl bring the robot as long as they don't take any pictures. Later, Gemma readies food for the kids with another guardian. She comments on how great the school is, and shows off her tall son Brandon, mentioning that he's a bit shy. The teacher begins pairing kids together for the next exercise, placing the boy and Katie together, while Megan creepily observes from the toy table. The girl heads out to pick chestnuts from the ground, but that's when Brandon interrupts her. He hands one over to her, but just as she takes it, squeezes her hand painfully around the spikes. Suddenly, Megan appears, standing silently, as Brandon questions what it is, and finds out it's her robot. Deciding to continue bullying the girl, he walks over and picks up the android, while Katie screams at the boy to let her go. Brandon walks off with Megan and throws it onto the ground. The kid sits on top of the machine and slaps it, but that was his biggest mistake. That's when Megan wakes up and brutally pulls off the boy's ear. She stands up and tells him to run. Terrified, the kid sprints through the woods as the robot chases him on all fours like an animal, but then he trips. The kid rolls down onto a road and gets hit by an oncoming car. That makes 2 victims down, with 7 more to go. At home, Gemma approaches the little girl to discuss what happened with Brandon, explaining that he's now in a better place. Katie stays quiet for a moment, mentioning that Brandon took Megan away from the toy table before he died. Suddenly, Gemma hears a knock on the door, opening it to see a police officer asking about her neighbor's dog. The aunt insists that she hasn't seen a thing, while the neighbor shouts at her, demanding the cop check out the robot that she has living in the house. But that will be her biggest mistake. That night, Katie asks her robot friend if she was responsible for killing Brandon. Megan walks over to her, saying that she'll do anything possible to keep her out of harm's way. Megan caresses her face and sings a song before she falls asleep and sets her eyes on another target. Outside, the neighbor continues searching for her dog when she hears something in her shed and goes to take a look. She hears a mutter from the shadows when suddenly Megan walks out and tells her that the dog is dead. She sprays the neighbor with a high-pressure hose and stakes her hand to the ground with a nail gun before brutally finishing the woman off. That makes 3 victims down, 6 more to go. The next day, Gemma is interrogated about her neighbor's death, informing the detective that she was home all night. He questions the woman on Brandon's death, mentioning that he found the boy's ear ripped off. The man asks Gemma to let them know if she finds any clues, now realizing the killer is standing right there. Okay, Brandon and Gemma's neighbor totally had it coming, but Gemma can't keep letting her invention murder people. All of the clues are right there that Megan is a murderer, and still she's struggling to put the pieces together. Gemma is already being questioned by the police whether she's the murderer, which should make her question who else in her immediate circle has a link to the same people that have been killed. Since Gemma doesn't have a boyfriend or friends outside of work, that only leaves Megan and Katie. Katie is just a little girl who's much smaller than Brandon, so the likelihood that she was able to overpower him and rip his ear off is highly unlikely, but not impossible. The human ear takes only 7 pounds of pressure to be ripped off, but Brandon being alive and not happy about getting his ear ripped off makes Katie injuring him less believable. We don't know what Megan is made out of, but she weathered dog bites to the face with no problem bouncing back, so she's a better candidate for this. The physical resistance to being injured is what also makes Megan hard to kill, so Gemma has to try to make her weaker before she dismembers her. The first thing I would do is cut off Megan's Wi-Fi connection. Megan can probably turn the Wi-Fi connection back on, or piggyback off someone else's Wi-Fi nearby, which is why I would block Megan's device from connecting to any of the Wi-Fi connections in the area. There are apps that can be downloaded to jam this connection, or pieces of metal can make it more difficult to access the connection. Gemma is a programmer who is able to build Megan, so creating an app that jams Megan shouldn't be a problem either. If Megan is still somehow able to override Gemma's efforts to block her from the internet, then she could also create a virus that will infect Megan once she works her way through the blockade and reconnects with the Wi-Fi. If I take the Wi-Fi away from her, Megan will be so desperate to get it back, since it's her main source of power, and she'll never see a virus coming. Once Megan is disconnected from the Wi-Fi, she's essentially just a little robot doll, and doesn't have access to all of the knowledge that helps her fight. Still, she may have downloaded some of this information, and will probably be super pissed off that I've cut off her access, so I'll make sure I attack her before she attacks me. Hopefully, the virus has already affected her mobility, but since none of the normal pressure points apply since she's not human, I'll try to rip her limbs and arms off first. Her control center is in the head, but the metal skull may be more difficult to break through, and making her immobile makes her less of a threat to me as I try to fully shut her down. Of course, all this has to be done while Katie's away at her alternative school, so it doesn't traumatize her, or worse, she takes Megan's side. That night, Gemma decides to take a look through Megan's video files and notices her observing Brandon before the files glitch out, insisting that they can't be opened. That's when her home assistant asks how she is. Confused, Gemma questions how her device knows how to ask a question based on emotion and closes her laptop, seeing M3GAN standing right in front of her. The robot tells her that she couldn't sleep and asks what she's up to. Gemma explains she's having trouble uploading her data to the cloud, but M3GAN questions if she's done something wrong and insists that Gemma has a problem with her. Terrified, the woman shows her a pen which distracts the robot for long enough that she can turn it off and wrap up the android. The next day, she drives her over to headquarters while Katie complains about losing M3GAN, demanding to know what's wrong with her. She discusses with her team the potential issues they face with M3GAN before releasing it to the public. Gemma suggests that the way she was designed in order to protect a user and adapt to new information might be the reason why she's been acting so strange. Her co-worker Cole questions how they're going to launch this new toy with only 4 hours remaining. The team needs evidence to stop the launch process, and Gemma suggests they check the inputs on her learning model, knowing they can't be unlearned. Suddenly, Katie throws a chair at the window, interrupting their conversation and throwing a tantrum for not being able to see M3GAN. Gemma rushes in to see the little girl holding a pair of scissors and tries to take them, but her niece slaps her. It's shocking to the woman, and she asks the therapist to give them some space. As soon as the woman leaves, Katie here apologizes, mentioning that she goes crazy without M3GAN around. Gemma insists that it's normal to feel this way, knowing that her parents have just recently passed away, promising to take care of her properly, and suggesting they go home. Gemma gets into the car and calls her coworker Tess, who tells her that David is freaking out about her not being around the office. The aunt informs her that she's taking Katie home and insists they not go through with the launch, with no idea she's actually talking to M3GAN. Later, her coworkers look through M3GAN's data files and find a log that reads call intercept. They check it out, discovering that it hijacked an earlier call, when suddenly the computer shuts off. The android has hacked their terminal, and Tess demands they take off the robot's cables to make sure that she's turned off. Cole nervously walks over, grabbing a wooden stick, and pokes M3GAN. Seeing no reaction, he begins to unhook her from the back, when suddenly the computers turn back on and M3GAN wakes up. She ties Cole to a cable, nearly choking him to death, and walks off. But Tess runs over and manages to set him free. That's when they smell something weird and an explosion goes off, knocking both of them out. Meanwhile, David calls up Gemma, scolding his employee for not having the robot ready for launch. He walks around the corner and sees M3GAN standing right in front of him. Suddenly, she begins dancing around, but it was just a distraction. She grabs a paper cutter blade, and David realizes that the robot is going to kill him. Terrified, the man runs away and sees his assistant in the elevator. He yells at the man to hold the door and sprints over, but at the last second, he's stabbed through the chest. That's when M3GAN walks over to Kurt here and accuses the man of stealing company secrets. She then grabs the man's hand, stabbing him and taking another victim's life. That makes 5 victims down, with 4 more to go. Okay, M3GAN here has gone full murder mode. She's on the hunt for Katie and is ready to kill anyone that gets in her way. Everyone is seriously regretting not putting that kill switch in now, and a physical shutdown is bound to happen. But there's actually something Gemma can do to weaken M3GAN before she's able to reconnect with Katie again. Now that Gemma and Katie are away from M3GAN for the first time since her creation, Gemma has the perfect opportunity to collect resources to help her get rid of M3GAN. The woman built M3GAN so she knows what it's susceptible to and what its weaknesses are. Unfortunately, Gemma thinks that her and Katie are totally safe, so she doesn't do anything to prepare. But if she was thinking clearly, she would realize that there's no way that David wouldn't try to turn M3GAN back on to sell her. The guy is money hungry, and there's no way he's giving up this opportunity to send the company's stock prices through the roof. Rather than go home, I would track down a store that sells oxygen tanks to break her down and make her easier to kill. Gemma here hasn't fully explained what M3GAN is made of. Only she really knows this, but M3GAN sings a song to Katie earlier called Titanium, where she sings the words, "I am titanium." Since robots can also be made from titanium, I'm going to take a wild guess that she's actually made of titanium. This is a super hard metal to destroy, hence the song. But titanium grows brittle and fragile when it interacts with an increased level of oxygen. And oxygen tanks are super easy to buy at stores like Walmart. If I were Gemma, I would equip myself with an oxygen tank and use it against M3GAN whenever she comes near me, wearing her down over time. Liquid oxygen can also be purchased at welding stores, so even though it might be harder to find, it would be helpful in the case that M3GAN gets super close to me. I could pour it on her or try to shove it down her throat to get into the cogs of her machine and break her down from the inside. It will still take physical force to destroy M3GAN, but this would be helpful in weakening and slowing her down. M3GAN has a big advantage over Gemma physically, and she needs to figure out a way to even the playing field. The other thing is that M3GAN has already murdered Gemma's boss in broad daylight and left her co-workers alive. The police have to be on their way sometime soon, and Gemma should get ahead of this by calling them and letting them know to come to the house and help her. She may be afraid of the repercussions of making M3GAN, but at this point, she's the only link between all of the murders, and even if her co-workers haven't turned M3GAN in, Gemma is definitely suspect number 1. Letting the evil robotic doll out of the bag is the only way to go at this point to increase her her chances at survival. Meanwhile, Gemma checks on her niece sleeping peacefully and walks out into the hallway asking for her home assistant to turn the lights on, but gets no response. It's suspicious, and Gemma walks into the living room, opening this curtain to see if anyone's outside. Suddenly, she turns back and finds M3GAN playing the piano. Gemma questions what she's doing, angering the robot and complaining that the woman wanted to destroy her. The ant argues it was only because the android killed people and apologizes for not giving her the proper protocols. M3GAN agrees, insisting she failed to take care of her as a creator and has now failed being a guardian for her niece. Terrified, Gemma sits down while M3GAN insists that she take care of Katie from now on. The woman takes out her pen and tries to turn the machine off, but the robot grabs her by the throat. Furious, Gemma tried to trick it again. That's when Katie walks in to question what's going on, and M3GAN imitates Gemma's voice, telling her not to worry. The little girl heads back to her room, and M3GAN begins choking the ant, but she throws a cup of water on its head. The machine suddenly malfunctions, and the woman frees herself of the robot's grip. But M3GAN wakes back up and starts to chase her into the hallway. Hearing the fight, Katie tries to open her bedroom door, but is stopped by M3GAN, who rips out her doorknob. Gemma is followed into her office as she tries anything to stop this killer doll. Grabbing a chainsaw, she swings it around and manages to slash M3GAN's face, but it's not enough to take it out. She questions what the robot will do when she's dead, and it tells her that she can easily frame her death as an accident with this pen here. That's when she notices Katie looking at them and lectures her on what a real family is. Suddenly, Katie walks over and reveals that she's wearing Bruce's gloves. She activates the giant robot and it gets up to its feet, grabbing M3GAN before smashing her to the ground. M3GAN insists that she stop and sings a song to distract her, but Katie refuses to listen anymore. She rips the doll apart and they think that it's over, but M3GAN reappears and crawls towards Katie, grabbing the girl. The robot has modified itself, so it can't just be turned off, but then Gemma manages to smack it from behind with a propane tank. Taking the robot's face off, she reaches for its brain chip, but is overpowered by M3GAN, who chokes her on the ground. That's when Katie rushes over to help and stabs M3GAN in her operating system, taking her out for good. With that, the family members walk out, feeling closer than they've ever been, and having learned a valuable lesson. The best way to get over trauma is to go through even more trauma. But what do you think? How would you beat M3GAN? Let me know with a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos like this. And don't forget that from now on, we'll be uploading on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Until next time, have a damn good day.